My time in the North Cascades was over, and I would be heading south to travel back west along another well-known scenic Washington road, Route 2. However, before heading down Route 2, my original plan called for me to spend the day around the Lake Chelan area. Instead, I decided to call an audible and take the day to explore a really unusual Washington geological landscape called the Channeled Scablands, just off to the southeast. Although I had touched a piece of the Scablands way back when I visited the Palouse Falls, there was more to see, and this would be my only opportunity to do it. Far different than the mountain landscape I had been in for the past week, the Scablands is a landscape of barren bedrock and strange rock formations. The change in landscape during this trip from place to place was fascinating. Created when a huge ice dam broke some 10,000 to 20,000 years ago, the Scablands are made up of long channels cut into the bedrock called coulees. There are some 150 coulees that have been identified, some being hundreds of feet deep. My first destination was to the Grand Coulee Dam, located on the largest of the coulees, the 60-mile-long Grand Coulee. The dam was built under FDR's Get Back to Work program during the 1930s Great Depression. It certainly was large, and on a less windy and warmer day, may have been more enjoyable to just sit and take in while lounging on the rocky ledges from the viewing area. Next, I headed south along the eastern shores of the Banks Lake, with fantastic views of the 500 to 600 foot cliffs on my right. Soon I would arrive at my second stop along the lake, where I would get to see and photograph Steamboat Rock, a basalt butte that rose 800 feet above the lake. What I didn't know until it was too late was that there was a drivable road to get out on Steamboat Rock. A lost opportunity for sure. My third stop was to see Dry Falls. According to Wikipedia, this virtually dry area was once home to falls that were 5 times the width of Niagara Falls, with 10 times the flow of all the current rivers in the world combined. It was now time to head to Lake Chelan area, where I planned to camp for the night. Once again, I was met with some very diverse and interesting landscapes along the way. At one point, I got a chance to see some glacial erratics, big boulders left behind by glaciers, including Jaeger Rock out in the middle of nowhere. Eventually, I would begin to descend from the plateau at 3,000 feet to once again arrive at the Columbia River, some 2,000 feet below. Once crossing the Columbia River, I headed to my night's destination, the Lake Chelan State Park, where I was fortunate to find an open campsite and enjoy a wonderful evening on Lake Chelan. Waking up to sunshine, I was up and out of camp early for a ride down the scenic Route 2. Although I had some items on my agenda, this part of the trip back to the Central Cascades was a bit light, unlike the North Cascades. I started out traveling along the western bank of the Columbia River, enjoying the beauty of the river along the way. Upon turning west onto Route 2, things started to get interesting, once reaching the Alpine-style town of Leavenworth, which is built around a Bavarian theme that caters to both downhill and Nordic skiing. After passing through the town, the road followed along the Wenatchee River for about 12 miles. Surrounded on both sides by mountains, the flow of river created white water everywhere. I was compelled to stop many times along the way to enjoy the sounds and the sights of the fast-moving water and to grab some photographs. As the road meandered through the mountains and with the climb up to Stevens Pass at an elevation of about 4,000 feet, the weather began to change rapidly and the temperatures dipped into the high 30s. Once over the pass, the temperatures began to rise, reaching 49 degrees by the time I reached Deception Falls at a little more than 1,800 feet. Just off the highway, Deception Falls was another example of the thunderous white water this area had on display. My next stop was further south to Wallace Falls that featured 3 separate waterfalls, a lower, middle, and upper falls. In total, the hike one way was only 2.75 miles, but the third leg was rated as a difficult hike, while the first 2 were rated moderate. At 250 feet of elevation, the weather and temperature were glorious. The hike was wonderful, and I thought rated appropriately. All 3 waterfalls were worth the hike, although for photography, only the first 2 offered good compositions, with the middle waterfall being the best. Given the temperature variations I experienced during the drive, I made the decision to find a campsite at a lower elevation for the night. It is now late morning and I'm headed to the northwest side of Mount Rainier. Earlier in the morning I had stopped off in the city of Monroe to get some laundry done and grab breakfast, but now it was time to visit one of the major highlights of the trip. My plan was to camp at the Mowich Lake Campground for the night and then hike to Spray Park and Spray Falls in the morning from there. As you will see, those plans will be interrupted. Most of the trip was fairly nondescript. However, after passing through the towns of Wilkinson and later Carbonata, I lost cell phone connection, and then I started to lose my GPS signal, so I wasn't getting regular location updates on my Gaia map. At a fork in the road, there were 2 distinct routes to Mount Rainier. I decided to take the left route, which is the direction the Apple Nav had previously told me. It wouldn't take long to realize this was the wrong choice with the sign indicating the road was closed 7.5 miles ahead. This road was closed to vehicles, but open to hikers and bikers. Maybe if it was earlier, warmer, and sunnier, I would have taken a quick bike ride down to see where it led. However, I really didn't have time, so I headed back to the fork in the road to the other route, which, as I realized, was the only real way to drive to the campground. Once again, I was met with a sign that said the road was closed in 11 miles, although I wasn't sure if that was before the campground or after. And I hadn't come all this way to turn back now, so off I went. As I reached elevations above 3,000 feet, the rain, more of a steady drizzle, began to fall. The road climbed through areas of cut lumber and offered some nice views. The dirt road was unusually well groomed, and it wouldn't be long before I found out why. A grader was ahead, busily repairing and smoothing out the road. I continued up what was now becoming a muddy track and soon entered into the Mount Rainier National Park. Within a mile of entering the park, I came to the gate closing the road, once again 5 miles short of my destination. Not only was my planned hike for the next day now out, I needed to make a decision on where to stay for the night. I decided to head toward the northeast side of the mountain and find a place close to there. I ended up at the Dallas campground for the night, and the next few days were about to get very interesting.